Hey guys, hope you guys are having a good night. Welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast Postgame Show. If you're new here, if you've never catched one of these postgame shows, what we do here is we break down each individual quarter. I take notes during the game, and then after I'm done talking about each individual quarter, I open up the show to questions and answers, comments, overall thoughts. If you guys want to use this podcast tonight, it's just a overall support group, overall therapy session. We can definitely do that. But let's get into this game tonight against the Boston Celtics. So, PSA, before we even kind of get into the quarters, there was no Jason Tatum tonight, no Jalen Duren. Jalen Duren hurt his wrist, apparently, so he did not play whatsoever. Isaiah Stewart got the starting nod, and for about the first, I'd say 5 to 6 minutes, both teams struggled to score the basketball. It was a very, very low scoring game for the first, 5.5, maybe 6 minutes. And it kind of felt like a game where it was going to be really close. You kind of look at the box score, you look at the final score, you're probably like, wow, really, dude? It's like a really close game. And the Celtics just started to hit their shots in the first quarter. Only like real bright spot I could say tonight. Asar's defense, especially in the first quarter against Jaylen Brown, I thought was really good. Really kept Jalen in a box. But the Pistons end the first quarter with only scoring 16 points. The Celtics 27. And I think I tweeted it out after the first quarter because it was such a struggling first quarter for them to even shoot the basketball. I'm pretty sure they shot 0 for 12 from 3 in the first quarter. And I think they only made like maybe 8 shots throughout the whole first quarter. It was just really ugly, really bad. If you guys watched the game live, it was just a game where you're like, if you're going to be gritty defensively, you better hope that the Celtics aren't hitting shots, but that really wasn't the case. Transitioning over into the second quarter, one player that we'll probably talk about throughout this, podcast tonight was Ron Holland. I thought he came in, gave the Pistons energy, really, really active. Got them within 4 points. And yeah, the Pistons were within 4 points of this game early on in the second quarter, but it didn't last. The Pistons defense just did not close out consistently enough for my liking, especially against the Celtics. And you guys know, we've seen the Celtics 3 times this year. Each game, these guys are just bombing threes. I think they hit 23s tonight. If I can pull up the box score on my phone and kind of look. Yeah, they hit 20 threes on 48 attempts. We hit 7 threes on 37 attempts. So we shot 18% from 3 tonight. They shot 47 or 41.7 from 3 tonight. So the perimeter shots were not falling for your Pistons, but they were falling for the Boston Celtics. They end the second quarter, the Celtics do, 59-44. Going into the third quarter, Boston just kept their foot on the gas. That's what championship level teams do. They were still red hot. And one thing I really did not like from your Detroit Pistons is when they weren't hitting shots, I didn't like how they were competing. I didn't like the body language. And I really didn't like them complaining for foul calls against the referees. I get there are nights where we can't get a consistent whistle, but when you're arguing with the referee and it's 5-on-3, 5-on-4, you just got to get back on defense and play. Like the refs will eventually call some fouls if you force your hand, but like you cannot be complaining about foul calls. Like I saw Simone Fontecchio do it a couple of times, and other players tonight. But overall, if you kind of just look at the foul in the box score, this was a game where the officials really didn't like try to take control of this game in terms of like where it was like a big discrepancy in terms of like if the Celtics got more foul calls than us. It was just a thing where we were hitting shots. The Celtics were moving the ball. We weren't. And we've seen this team 3 straight times. And each game has had a common theme. Us not playing consistently throughout the game, and the Celtics moving the ball side to side and hitting a shitload of threes. But to end the third quarter, Boston had 93. Your Detroit Pistons had 68. And the only bright spot I could really say, I'm going to focus on 2 players so that I think they deserve a round of applause. The first player is Marcus Sasser. Now, Jaden Ivey did not have his best night tonight. It's kind of been a common theme as of late with Jaden Ivey. If we do look at the box score, he had 10 points on 3 out of 14 shooting. His shot just was not falling tonight. Marcus Sasser came in a very short amount of time, had 9 points, 4 to 7 shooting in 17 minutes. And JB went to Marcus Sasser to end the third quarter and basically played him all the fourth quarter. I thought he did a really good job of just coming in, bringing energy, defending. His give a crap level, I felt like was something that I appreciated watching, because some players tonight, their give a crap level, they just weren't trying. Like I don't even care if they're starters. Like, if you're gonna put in Isaiah Stewart and Marcus Sasser and Ron Holland, I don't care if the spacing doesn't work. At least they came out tonight and gave a crap and wanted to compete and be out there. Tobias left with a thumb injury, I guess. Jam finger, never came back. And Ron Holland, we'll talk about it. Career high tonight. Scored 20 points in the fourth quarter. And he scored 26 points on 11 out of 14 shooting, 3 rebounds, and 2 out of 5 from 3. Now, it's a blowout, and you guys probably don't care about that. And I understand it. I mean, this is a team that has had our number for several years. I think for Ron, going in Boston, having the game that he had, it could be a confidence booster for the kid. He just comes into these games and brings energy, brings effort. You never really know, going into next week, what that does for his confidence overall. I thought if you kind of just want to pinpoint individual performances, Marcus Sasser tonight had a good game. Cade had a good game, and Ron Holland had a good game. But we just weren't locked in. We weren't ready for the Celtics, and that it's a championship level team. And watching tonight, it shows you how far away the Detroit Pistons are away from playing with the top dogs in the Eastern Conference. Would not surprise me if the Celtics repeat. That's just how good they are from top to bottom. I mean, they didn't have Jason Tatum tonight or Sam Hauser, and they still won this game convincingly. They were in control the entire night. I'm going to take a short break, and then we'll get into some comments and questions with you guys, and we'll wrap this podcast up. We're just going to be right back. Talk to you guys in a bit. Okay, you guys, we are back from that short break. Now, this is the part of the podcast where we take comments, questions. If you guys have any concerns or just want to vent it out, the floor is yours. We're making this all about you guys. We're going to get into some questions that you guys did put in the comment section if you're watching live on YouTube. And we're going to give the first comment of the show to Johnny. He says, is anyone surprised with this outcome? I'm not so much surprised. I know I was talking to some people in our group chat today, and they're like, what do you feel in a blowout? Like, you think it's going to be a close game? And I was like, I'm not sure because I don't know what team's going to show up. If the team that showed up in New York showed up tonight, it might have been a closer game. Obviously, we had 4 nights off because of the NBA Cup this week, but the compete level, I thought, just wasn't consistent enough. That's why you saw JB take so many timeouts. I wasn't surprised that the Celtics shot and made 23s. They're one of the best perimeter shooting NBA teams, if not the best. To answer your question, Johnny, no, I'm not surprised. Boston's a really, really good team, and they're a very well-coached team. And I want the Pistons to eventually beat them. I don't want this to be a thing where, they beat us like 20 straight times over a couple-year period. And I think when you watch the Celtics versus the Pistons, you can kind of see the talent gap between these two teams. The Celtics have so much talent, elite role players. Guys like Luke Cornett were just killing us on the offensive glass. And he's a 7-footer, and obviously we don't have a 7-footer on the roster. We have Isaiah Stewart and Paul Reed that are both listed around 6'8". And I think that's kind of being generous, but not really surprised by the outcome. I just felt like at least make it competitive, make it at least a 10-point game if you could. But at the end of the day, it's the Celtics, and they're a very good basketball team. Next question or comment, I should say, is from Sunita. They say, ugly game, but we're a growing team. Yeah, this is not a perfect roster, and I think we understand that. I think sometimes when we do these podcasts, and even, talking with you guys when we do these post-game shows, I think sometimes we live in the moment. We get reactionary. But this is a good game for the Pistons to look at. Look at all the Celtic games this year, watch the tape, and see how they move the ball side to side. See how they communicate defensively. I think these are teaching moments. Obviously, we like what we see out of Cade Cunningham. Overall, this season, Jaden Ivey has been much improved, but as of late, he's been struggling. It doesn't help when your veterans, don't really score the basketball tonight. But overall, this is still a growing team. I do agree with you, Sunita. But I'm still happy with the progress of this team. Would have been nicer if they won the game, but I understand. It's a long season. We're only 26 games in. And we're still kind of, flirting with that play-in spot. I think we're around the 11th place right now. Last time I looked at the ESPN standings for the Eastern Conference. But overall, I like the direction in which this team is going. And a comment from Ed. And it says, time to be honest about this team. The guys around Cade just aren't good. Ivy is decent rotational player, not an actual duo to Cade. Okay, so I want to dissect this comment from you, Ed, because I'm never going to tell a fan how to fan. I'm just not. That's why I have these Q&As with you guys, so you guys can have your opinions heard. This team is better than last year's. Okay, we understand that. They're still competing. Now, I don't know what your expectations were for the season. I don't know if you thought this was an 8 seed. I don't know if you thought that this was going to be a play-in team. It's okay for us to have high expectations for this basketball team. It is. And I've been very transparent with where I think this team will probably go in the win column. I've told you guys, I think this is around a 27-win team, 27-30. Those have been my expectations. That's where I think they'll probably finish at the end of the year. The guys around Cade just aren't good. In terms of last year's roster to this year's roster, Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., they're better than what you had last year. They're better than Joe Harris. They're better than Killian Hayes, Isaiah Livers, Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman. They're better. Now, are they, better where in terms of like if you compare their stats, they're probably marginally better. Maybe outside of Malik Beasley because he's had such a great season, but like the roster on paper is, I think, better. That's where I kind of disagree with you. The guys around Cade are good. They just had a rough shooting night. Ivy's a decent rotational player. I do agree. I disagree with the actual duo because I think when they've had games together, they do look like a good backcourt. Now, obviously, right now, Jaden Ivey is struggling. He's had a couple of games where he's just not shooting the basketball well. And that has kind of been a theme with him where he can shoot the basketball at a really high clip. I mean, it looks good and we're happy and we're excited about it. But there are also stretches throughout his career. We have more evidence now where he's just not shooting the basketball at a decent clip. He's struggling to shoot the basketball right now. And obviously it's just a little slump. Players go through slumps. That's what I will disagree with you, Ed. I think Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham are a average duo. I'd like to see them be above average and possibly good down the road. I'm just not going to come up here, be reactionary, and say that they're not a good duo. When we've had games this year where they're a main reason why we've won basketball games this season. But thank you for the comment, Ed. I do appreciate it. Got a comment from Patrick, and we're going to read it. It says, Jalen is needed with the starting unit. Stu is undersized and plays a perfect role off the bench. Leave it like that. Yeah, Jalen Duren would have been helpful tonight, especially when you're going up against guys like Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, Luke Cornett. What I will say is Isaiah Stewart being undersized at 6'8", playing center, he tried. When you're playing a 5-out offense like the Celtics, you kind of have to pick your poison if you're going to try to run Kristaps Porzingis off the 3-point line. You're constantly switching with all of their shooters. I don't really know if Jalen Duren played tonight that the result would have been too much different. And that's not to say anything bad about Jalen. It's just saying how good the Celtics are, but I do agree with you. Jalen's size is much needed. He's a good 2 inches taller than Isaiah Stewart. He's 6'10", 6'11", if you kind of like buy that, but I think he's closer to 6'10" personally. But I personally think the Pistons need a 7-footer. There are too many times where we just get out-rebounded. We're not grabbing defensive rebounds. If we do box out, there are other players on this team that just look around and the other team gets an offensive rebound. But I do like what I've seen out of Isaiah Stewart this year in terms of coming off the bench. Jalen Duren is starting right now, yes, but effort-wise, defensively throughout the season, it hasn't been the same as Isaiah Stewart's, and that's night and day. Isaiah Stewart has given effort all 26 games. I can't really say the same thing for Jalen Duren. I'm going to get to a couple of more of these, comments and questions, and then we'll probably wrap this podcast up. If you guys didn't watch our Detroit Pistons roundtable last night, definitely do. Had Eric Vincent, Sean Murphy, Pistons Jack, and Detroit Kool-Aid. I think we were on for like 2.5 hours, talked about a lot of different topics, but get to a couple more of these comments and questions, and then we'll just wrap this whole podcast up. But let's see. Mr. Longitude, it's frustrating seeing Nassar not being on the floor consistently enough. His ability to cut is something we definitely need. Yeah, I think he's still dealing with the minute restriction, Mr. Longitude. Obviously, coming back from blood clots, his conditioning is not 100%, I guess. They're like short little spurts in terms of like 2, 3, maybe 4 minutes, and then he has to sit on the bench. If he was 100% healthy and his conditioning was up, you probably would have seen him out there for a good 20, 25 minutes, maybe even 30. Defensively, he brings another element to the game. I agree with you. His cutting is elite. His ability to just run the floor in transition. He's definitely a player that I think a lot of us really like. But at the end of the day, he's got to get his conditioning up. I don't know when they're going to lift the minute restriction from him. You have to remember, I think he just got cleared maybe 2-3 weeks ago. So I would expect him to, get out that minute restriction maybe towards the end of December if we're lucky. But it's really hard, I bet, for him to get into a rhythm. Only playing 3 minute spurts, and then you have to sit on the bench for another 10. But overall, I really, really like, what I've seen out of him since he has come back from blood clots. Did Al Horford look like a champion before Boston? Great question, Weezy. If you guys have followed Al Horford's career, he was an all-star in Atlanta. Really good stretch five, could really pass, protect the paint in his prime. To answer your question, I would probably say no. Like his stint in Philly, I thought he was serviceable, but I think when he went back to Boston, he's just one of those, if you guys want to call him a role player, he's just one of those role players that is just a really smart basketball player at the end of the day. He can shoot the ball, spread the floor, pass, defend. Still at his age, because he's been in the league for quite some time. But no, I don't really think he looked like a championship level player. Before Boston, he was a good player. I think a player that, funny enough, we actually tried to target years ago, about 8 years ago in free agency. He was almost a Piston, but we settled for John Lure. Yeah. Wouldn't that have been nice? Could have had a Al Horford, Andre Drummond duo under Stan Van Gundy, but Al Horford decided to sign with Boston. But answer your question, Weezy. Yeah, I think if you look at Al Horford, he's always been a good player, but I think he's a championship level player in the Celtics system. We'll let Organic have the last comment of this podcast, and I'm going to wrap it up, you guys. And it has to do with Jaden Ivey. He says, as hard as Ivey works, he needs to have a go-to move that he can always depend on. He's wildly inconsistent. And you have brought this up multiple times, Organic. I do want to give you credit. Even if he had like maybe a step back like Peyton Pritchard has, or a floater, or something like that, I see what you're saying. He definitely is very inconsistent. I'd like the 3-point shot to be a little bit more, go down a little bit more, but I think that's something he could probably work on this offseason. Overall, throughout the season, I thought he's shown progress defensively and offensively, but yeah, I hope he can kind of like, carve a niche in terms of like just having like a go-to shot that he knows he can get, kind of like Cade has with his mid-range. Like when Cade shoots a mid-range shot, I expect it to go in most nights. It'll be really interesting to see if Ivey can develop that in his game. But I do agree with you. But we're gonna wrap this podcast up, you guys. I'm really, really exhausted after last night's podcast. It was about almost 3 hours with all those guys. But Pistons lose 123-99. They don't play any more games this week. They have 4 games, I believe, next week. So there'll be way more post-game podcast shows. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Hopefully the Lions beat the Bills this Sunday. But until next time, you guys, peace.